In a universe where the strongest conquer and the weak perish, Earth was thought to be nothing more than a simple, backward planet ripe for the taking. But when the Garanthians, a ruthless alien race known for their brutal conquests, set their eyes on the blue planet, they quickly discovered that Earth was no ordinary prize. What they didn't know was that the planet had been waiting for them, waiting to turn the tables in the most unexpected way. The war they began would not be one of domination, but of survival, because Earth wasn't their prize, it was their prison. The Garanthian fleet, a towering armada of dark ships that cast shadows across entire planets, arrived at Earth's solar system with the quiet arrogance of a species used to victory. Their reputation had spread far and wide, galaxies had fallen, civilizations crushed beneath their boots. They viewed the blue planet as nothing more than a prize, a ripe, defenseless world ready for plundering. But Earth had a secret, one that the Garanthians would soon discover, albeit in the hardest way possible. At first, all seemed as expected. The Garanthians' ships entered Earth's orbit, their weapons primed, their sensors locked on. They launched their first wave of battle cruisers and ground troops, confident that humanity, fragile and technologically behind, would crumble at the sight of such overwhelming force. The humans, well, they were busy pretending they didn't care. They were sipping coffee, watching TV, and reading the morning news while the stars above them shifted into a war zone. There was no panic, no mass exodus. The military went on alert, sure, but they didn't flinch. No one truly thought the aliens would actually land. They had no idea what was about to happen. When the first Garanthian assault ship touched down, it was met not with a desperate cry or a fleeing crowd, but with an almost comical sense of purpose. From beneath the ground, gigantic walls of steel rose, revealing weapons that hadn't seen combat in decades. The Garanthians gawked at the sudden eruption of humanity's military might. Old missile silos, those quaint, rusting remnants of a past age, were reactivated in an instant. Satellite arrays that had been gathering dust now swiveled with precision, their targeting systems locking onto alien craft with unsettling accuracy. It wasn't cutting-edge tech, it was just human tech. And it had one thing the Garanthians didn't: sheer stubbornness. As the first shots were fired, the invaders were left stunned. Earth's defenses weren't impressive on paper, but humans had a knack for making the most of what they had. They took old systems, ones written off by others as relics, and made them deadly. Cities turned into battlegrounds as massive mechs, like ancient giants with modern firepower, stomped through the streets. There was no fanfare, no grand military parade, just people who had no idea they were about to save the world. The Garanthians soon found themselves dodging missile fire that they'd never expected. A few of their ships disintegrated in fiery explosions, their once pristine hulls now twisted wrecks. The humans had simply refused to roll over, laughing at their would-be conquerors as they pushed forward with sheer audacity. One Garanthian general, having watched Earth's first response on the battlefield, muttered something that sounded suspiciously like, "What the hell?" as another of his fleet was shredded to pieces. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't crying for mercy. No, they were fighting back and winning. To the Garanthians, this wasn't part of the plan. They came expecting an easy conquest, but what they got was humanity's greatest weapon, the refusal to ever give up. The battle had only just begun, and the Garanthians were already realizing that Earth wasn't the prize they thought it was. In fact, it was turning into something far worse, a nightmare they were trapped in. The Garanthians, ever the conquerors, were used to seeing entire civilizations crumble in the blink of an eye. But on Earth, something was amiss. They watched as their massive warships were torn apart by human ingenuity, a weaponized form of chaos that had them scratching their multi-eyed heads in confusion. It was supposed to be a clean sweep. Instead, it was turning into a giant cosmic headache. The first real blow came when their armored landings on Earth's surface were met with something far more terrifying than human soldiers: mechs. Clunky and enormous, these old-fashioned machines rumbled to life, as if they'd been waiting for this moment, their metallic feet shaking the ground with every step. To the Garanthians, it was laughable. How could these rusty relics of a bygone era stand up to their advanced weaponry? After all, they had superlaser cannons that could disintegrate entire cities. But Earth's defenses had learned the art of surprise. As the first mech launched a volley of missiles, it was clear that Earth was playing a different game. The missiles didn't just hit their targets, they pierced through Garanthian armor like a hot knife through butter. Explosions ripped apart their assault vehicles, sending them tumbling across the dusty plains in fiery chaos. The Garanthians scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. Earth had made a statement: you don't get to mess with us without consequences. Back in the skies, things weren't much better. Garanthian warships, gleaming and intimidating, began to rain fire on Earth's cities until Earth responded with a punchline: scramblers. These seemingly innocuous devices had been sitting dormant for years, gathering dust and quietly waiting for the day they'd be needed. And now, that day had arrived. As the Garanthian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the scramblers activated, sending waves of interference that scrambled their communications, disrupted their weapon systems, and caused their once powerful ships to stagger in midair like drunken spacefaring giants. It was the most absurd thing they'd ever seen. Did these humans just hack us? A Garanthian officer asked, staring wide-eyed at the screen in disbelief. Yes, they did, another officer responded flatly. And they seem to be doing it better than we are. But the true shock came not from the weapons or the tactics, but from the very nature of Earth's resistance. Humans, the Garanthians had believed, were nothing but primitive creatures. They lived in cities, they wore clothes, and they fought wars with outdated technology. The Garanthians had expected to mow them down like grass. What they didn't realize was that humans had a secret weapon: their adaptability. The humans could take anything, no matter how outdated, and turn it into a tool of destruction. They could turn the tables in a heartbeat. On the ground, human soldiers in tattered uniforms suddenly launched guerrilla attacks from the shadows, armed with improvised explosives and repurposed alien tech. To the Garanthians, it felt like being hit by 100 invisible punches from all directions. Every move they made was met with a counterattack they couldn't predict, an ambush they couldn't escape. The enemy wasn't supposed to think this way. Maybe we should have stuck to the plan? One Garanthian commander muttered as another of his ships was decimated by an ancient Earth missile launcher, now retrofitted to destroy him. And that's when the true nature of the war became clear. The Garanthians weren't battling a primitive species. No, they were battling a species that had learned how to fight dirty. A species that had no rules, no boundaries. Earth's weapon was its chaos. And as the Garanthians watched in horror, they realized something they hadn't planned for. Earth wasn't just defending itself. Earth was winning. As the days passed, the Garanthian fleet began to realize that their mission to conquer Earth was slipping away faster than they could react. The humans weren't retreating. They weren't begging for mercy. No, they were getting stronger, adapting in ways that defied all logic. The battle lines had shifted, and the Garanthians, once so sure of their victory, were now looking over their shoulders at every corner of Earth's battlefield. They couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something they hadn't seen. Then, the unthinkable happened. A small group of Garanthian scouts, eager to uncover the source of Earth's uncanny resilience, infiltrated the planet's most secret archives. They believed the human forces were simply using advanced alien technology they had scavenged from fallen fleets. But as they dug deeper, they uncovered something far more terrifying than any weapon they could ever wield. Earth was not a random planet in the galaxy. It was a prison. A trap. And humanity wasn't just an ordinary species. They were an experiment, a creation meant for something far greater than mere survival. The Garanthians, who prided themselves on conquering the galaxy's most formidable civilizations, had unwittingly walked into a nightmare of their own making. It started to become clear. Thousands of years ago, before Earth was even called Earth, an ancient, now dead race had used this very planet as a holding cell for dangerous species. The planet was a containment field designed to isolate and neutralize any threats that might arise. But somewhere along the line, this experiment had gone terribly wrong. The very species the ancient race had hoped to keep contained had evolved, mutated, and become something even they could never have foreseen. The humans had gained a level of intelligence, adaptability, and resilience that no one had expected, and, worse yet, they were now free. The Garanthians felt the chill of dread settle in their spines. This wasn't just about fighting a pesky species. They had unknowingly unleashed the horrors of a prison that had held its captives for millennia. The technology on Earth was not merely advanced, it was forged in a way to prevent escape, to make sure that no one could ever leave, including the original creators. And now, in their greed to conquer, the Garanthians had set that mechanism in motion. They weren't just dealing with humans. They were dealing with the descendants of those the ancients had feared. As the Garanthian scouts continued their investigation, they stumbled upon a series of cryptic records hidden deep beneath Earth's surface. The more they read, the more they understood the sheer scope of their mistake. The ancient race had tried to imprison the worst of the worst. But it turned out that the most dangerous thing they had ever locked away was humanity itself. The Garanthians now faced an existential crisis. Earth was no longer a prize to be won, it was a prison from which they couldn't escape. The planet's defenses, once thought to be primitive, were now revealed as the product of millennia of careful planning and design. And that wasn't even the worst part. The humans had been waiting for the moment they would finally break free. In the midst of their dawning horror, one Garanthian officer looked up from his findings with a wry smile. Well, at least we didn't end up in the worst prison in the galaxy. Another officer, who had been eerily silent until then, replied, "You really want to be in that prison? Because if this keeps up, we're going to find out firsthand." The Garanthians had underestimated one thing above all else: humanity's hunger for freedom. And now that hunger was unleashed with a vengeance. The Garanthians were beginning to realize something they should have grasped from the moment they arrived. Earth wasn't just a simple planet to conquer. It wasn't a battlefield like the hundreds of others they'd ravaged across the galaxy. No, Earth was something far more dangerous. It was a trap, and they were the ones who had fallen into it. The more the Garanthians uncovered about the planet's history, the more they understood the full scope of their blunder. Earth had been constructed not as a colony, but as a containment zone. Long ago, an ancient civilization had locked away dangerous species, and Earth had become a massive, self-sustaining prison. For centuries, it had served its purpose, holding its captives and preventing their escape. And now, the humans, those seemingly insignificant creatures, had not only survived, but thrived. They had evolved, adapted, and, most importantly, escaped the prison. This was no longer about winning a battle or claiming a prize. The Garanthians had unknowingly triggered a set of events that would bring about their own downfall. The humans had control of the very technology the ancient civilization had used to trap them, and they were using it against their captors with terrifying efficiency. Earth was no longer just humanity's home, it was their weapon. And the Garanthians were now on the wrong end of it. To make matters worse, Earth's defenses were not simply weapons of war, they were part of a much larger system. Satellite arrays, once designed to monitor prisoners, now tracked the Garanthians' every move. Earth's resources, once used to suppress, were now being funneled into counterattacks. Each resource the Garanthians tried to plunder was now a tool of war, turned against them with ruthless precision. Garanthian engineers scrambled to adapt their technology, but each attempt was met with failure. Earth's defenses were alive, pulsing with a power that seemed to have a mind of its own. The very systems that had once held humanity captive now held the key to their captors' destruction. And the Garanthians were woefully unprepared for the wrath of a species that had been waiting for this moment for millennia. As they struggled to understand the depth of their mistake, a Garanthian officer stumbled upon a chilling realization. The humans hadn't just survived. They had planned. The ancient race that had originally created Earth's prison had made one fatal error. They had underestimated their captives' ability to adapt. What was meant to be a temporary holding cell had become a breeding ground for ingenuity, resilience, and, most of all, revenge. One Garanthian general stared out at the chaotic battlefield, his mind racing. "How did we not see this coming?" he muttered. "It's like they were waiting for us for centuries." Another officer, who had remained silent until now, let out a laugh that was half disbelief, half terror. "Yeah, the humans were pretty busy, you know? They had a few other things to work on, like evolving into an unstoppable force. But hey, good thing we got them in the end, right?" The general turned to him with a glare. "What's your suggestion? Retreat? Run home to tell the council we screwed up?" "Well," the officer said with a shrug, "we could always go the flee and panic route. Or we could just blame it all on the person who thought Earth was a good target in the first place." The truth was undeniable. Earth wasn't just a planet to be conquered. It was a prison, and the Garanthians were the ones now trapped inside. And as the humans waged their relentless counteroffensive, the Garanthians realized with a growing sense of dread that there would be no escape. They weren't just fighting for dominance, they were fighting for their lives, and they were losing. The humans had flipped the script. Earth was no longer the Garanthians to win. It was their prison, and they were the ones who would suffer the consequences. The Garanthians, once so confident in their dominance, now found themselves trapped in a battle they couldn't win. Earth had become a living, breathing entity, its defenses a sentient force that seemed to anticipate every move they made. And for the first time in the long, brutal history of their empire, the Garanthians had no plan. They were used to being the hunters. But now they were the hunted. Back on Earth's surface, the humans had begun to organize their forces with terrifying efficiency. What had started as sporadic resistance had evolved into a full-scale war. The same technology the Garanthians had dismissed as primitive was now turned into deadly weapons, each more inventive than the last. The humans, with their penchant for innovation, had started creating weapons that the Garanthians couldn't even fathom. What really began to frustrate the invaders was the humans' refusal to follow the rules of engagement. Where was the fear, the desperation they had expected? Instead, every Garanthian attempt to assert control was met with utter chaos. Humans didn't just resist, they reversed the very concept of warfare. Guerrilla tactics had evolved into precision strikes that made their enemies look like amateurs. It wasn't just about winning. It was about making the invaders regret ever landing on Earth. The Garanthians had underestimated one crucial thing: humans could laugh in the face of death. and that laughter had a habit of driving their enemies insane. One Garanthian officer, after watching an entire division of his fleet get obliterated by what appeared to be homemade bombs, turned to his comrades in disbelief. Did we just get outsmarted by firecrackers? Seriously? The Garanthians had assumed that the humans' technological advancements were their greatest strength, but that was their second mistake. The true weapon was human resilience. It was the ability to turn a seemingly hopeless situation into a thriving counterattack. And Earth had an inexhaustible supply of it. Meanwhile, in the sky, the Garanthians' once imposing fleet was being slowly whittled down by Earth's aging defense systems. Some of their ships were taken down by outdated human tech, while others were caught in traps made from nothing more than old satellites and repurposed space debris. It was a cosmic joke, one that the Garanthians were starting to get far too late. As Earth's forces rallied, a strange sense of humor began to spread among them. One group of resistance fighters, after successfully hacking a Garanthian warship's control system, had taken to broadcasting a message across the Garanthian communications network. The message? A simple, cheery, "You've been pranked." The Garanthians had no idea how to respond to that, and their morale sank further. One officer was heard muttering, "Are they really doing this? Are we in the middle of a war or a prank show?" The absurdity of it all was not lost on the humans. Earth had become a place where the invaders' superiority was systematically mocked, and the more they tried to retaliate, the deeper they dug their own grave. The Garanthians had come here to conquer, to dominate, to prove their unchallenged superiority. Instead, they were finding themselves beaten by a planet that refused to play by any known rules of warfare. But the real twist, the one that really shattered their confidence, came when the humans began to broadcast messages back to the Garanthians, messages that were frankly borderline sarcastic. "Hey, thanks for the weapons," one broadcast said. "We'll be sure to send you a thank you card. You know, after the war." That was the breaking point. The Garanthians had never been mocked. They were conquerors, feared and respected across the galaxy. And now they were losing to humans who, it seemed, had mastered the art of war, resilience, and most unexpectedly, humor. In a desperate attempt to regain control, the Garanthians launched an all-out offensive, only to watch as the humans turned it into the biggest game of cosmic dodgeball the galaxy had ever seen. At that moment, one Garanthian commander turned to his second-in-command, eyes wide with disbelief. "We're not even fighting anymore, are we? We're just playing." The second-in-command sighed. "Yep, and it's really bad sportsmanship." The Garanthian fleet, once a symbol of galactic dominance, was now a collection of smoldering wreckage scattered across Earth's skies. Their attempts to salvage control had become a running joke among the human resistance. The invaders, so accustomed to dictating the terms of battle, were now trapped in a never-ending spiral of failure, outsmarted at every turn by the unrelenting creativity of their opponents. Earth's defenders had turned the battlefield into a showcase of human ingenuity and dark humor. A fleet of Garanthian dropships, loaded with reinforcements, had been rerouted mid-air by hacked navigation systems, depositing troops in the middle of a massive Earth stadium. The invaders, bewildered, found themselves surrounded by cheering humans who had already painted "Welcome to the Losers Club" on the stadium walls. A Garanthian commander reportedly muttered, "This isn't war, it's humiliation on a planetary scale." While Earth's human inhabitants weaponized their planet's natural defenses, the Garanthians' own technology betrayed them. Advanced AI systems, previously their strategic backbone, became liabilities under relentless cyberattacks. Earth hackers turned the invaders' drones into kamikaze chaos machines, crashing into their own ships or performing elaborate aerobatics before plunging into the ocean. It was less a battlefront and more a cosmic comedy, with the Garanthians unwittingly playing the role of the punchline. As for their ground forces, the once imposing soldiers were now reduced to panicked whispers about human traps. Entire battalions were lured into forests, only to find themselves navigating mazes of pitfalls, improvised explosives, and, inexplicably, mannequins rigged with fireworks. One officer's final transmission included the phrase, "Beware the dummies. They explode." Back in orbit, things were no better. The Garanthian fleet, crippled by Earth's relentless countermeasures, found themselves unable to retreat. Every attempt to disengage was met with resistance from Earth's jury-rigged satellites. What should have been outdated junk was now a net of death, locking them in place with relentless missile strikes and electromagnetic pulses. The planet wasn't just defending itself, it was holding them hostage. And humanity didn't stop there. They began broadcasting propaganda to the remaining fleet, a mix of taunts, exaggerated claims, and outright absurdities. "Earth, home of humanity, masters of chaos and pizza," read one transmission. Another offered a Galactic Warloser starter pack, featuring a guide to eating humble pie and a playlist of upbeat human music, including a track aptly titled "Another One Bites the Dust." The psychological warfare was relentless. For a species like the Garanthians, who prided themselves on stoic superiority, it was a nightmare. They weren't just being defeated, they were being mocked into oblivion. One particularly grim day for the invaders came when their flagship's AI was overtaken by human hackers. The once majestic ship, a beacon of their empire's strength, now displayed a giant holographic banner that read, "Earth welcomes you, galactic conquerors turned cosmic clowns." The Garanthian leadership, now cornered and desperate, began to grasp the truth. Earth wasn't just fighting back. It was teaching them a lesson they'd never forget. Arrogance had consequences, and humans were the universe's undisputed experts at making those consequences unforgettable. The Garanthians' once proud invasion had unraveled into pure chaos. Their forces, shattered and humiliated, were no longer fighting to conquer Earth, they were scrambling to escape it. But Earth had other plans. The planet's improvised defenses and the relentless ingenuity of its inhabitants had turned the invaders' retreat into a galactic-scale slapstick comedy. The Garanthian flagship, the last beacon of their empire's might, became the focal point of the humans' final act of defiance. With its systems crippled by repeated cyber attacks, the ship was an easy target. Earth's forces didn't destroy it outright, no, that would have been too kind. Instead, they hacked into its internal systems and rerouted its AI to play humanity's most obnoxious creations, pop songs on loop. The Garanthian crew, forced to endure hours of catchy, repetitive lyrics, begged their commanders for relief. One officer allegedly filed a report titled "Emergency Request, Silence, or Certain Madness." Meanwhile, the remaining Garanthian ground forces faced their own brand of torment. Earth's resistance fighters had set up elaborate traps, not to kill, but to embarrass. Entire platoons found themselves stuck in glue-filled craters, coated in neon paint, or pelted with an endless barrage of harmless but incredibly irritating projectiles. It was psychological warfare at its finest. One soldier's final transmission before abandoning their post summed it up: "I didn't sign up to be a galactic joke." Above the planet, the Garanthian fleet's attempts to regroup were thwarted by Earth's repurposed satellites. These cobbled-together contraptions, held together with duct tape and determination, acted as orbiting sentries, intercepting escape routes and disrupting communications. The invaders were left fumbling in the dark, their once sophisticated technology reduced to scrap in the face of Earth's relentless creativity. The final blow came when Earth unleashed its ultimate move, a planetary broadcast aimed not just at the Garanthians, but at the entire galaxy. Across every known communication channel, the humans sent out a message that would forever cement their reputation: Earth, the galaxy's worst prison, and now yours too. Enjoy your stay. Alongside the text was a montage of Garanthian failure, ships crashing, soldiers stuck in humiliating predicaments, and, of course, the infamous "Welcome to the Losers Club" footage. As the message spread across the galaxy, the Garanthian status as a dominant force crumbled. Other species, long oppressed by their empire, began to rise up, emboldened by Earth's victory. The invaders weren't just defeated, they were publicly dethroned, their reputation in tatters. For humanity, the battle wasn't just about survival. It was about sending a message: Earth was no one's prize. It wasn't a resource to exploit or a planet to claim. It was a warning. Those who dared to attack would find themselves not just defeated but humiliated, outwitted, and sent packing with their tails between their legs. As the last of the Garanthian fleet limped away, humanity turned its attention back to its world. Repairs began, laughter echoed in the streets, and Earth settled back into its role as the universe's unlikeliest victor. But one thing was certain: anyone foolish enough to try again would discover the hard way that Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a cosmic lesson in humility. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon Stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure.